Welcome into the Sporting News Studios for Ram Fantasy Update. My name is Tom Vandervoort. Our fantasy expert from Sporting News Fantasy Source is George Winkler. George, you run the whole shooting match over there.
I do.
So you must have more knowledge than those other guys we've had down here.
We'll see about that.
All right, so what can you tell me then about what the heck is going on with the Green Bay Packers offense? Aaron Rodgers getting beat up last week. Dallas Cowboys, Tony Romo, he's having problems. We're expecting more points from some of these skill guys on these teams.
Well, what's going wrong is the offensive lines have been playing poorly. And Green Bay, it was interesting to see how they responded to Rodgers getting sacked 8 times in the first half. They came out running the ball with Cedric Benson in the second half, and Benson's something that they didn't have last year. So now that they have that option, it'll be interesting to see moving forward whether they choose to use it, especially against teams with good pass rushes, and that gives them the opportunity to take some of the pressure off of Rodgers. His numbers are still going to be good, but they might not be astronomically good like they were last season.
Well, if it's like there's so much turnover in this league, we forget how much turnover there is. If you look at players just getting beat up, you look at the Packers offensive line, like how big of an area of concern should that be for fans who are looking for stuff from this offense?
I don't think it'll be a big concern this week against the Saints because the Saints defense has been terrible this year. But moving forward, you know, they face the Texans in Week 6, and J.J. Watt is playing outstanding.
He's a beast, baby.
He's a beast. So that'll be another guy that they have to take a look at. As for the Cowboys, they have a tough matchup this week right now with the Chicago Bears, who are among the leaders in sacks. So Tony Romo really needs Jason Witten to get back on track. You know, he had the spleen injury early in the season. That slowed him down. They need Jason Witten to get those short passes and take some of the pressure off of him and open things up for DeMarco Murray, because Murray has been basically ineffective except for one run he had against the New York Giants in Week 1.
Yeah, I think Murray's a talent. I mean, I think we all see the talent. So again, it comes back to the offensive line. How big a concern is that for the Dallas Cowboys?
It's huge with them because they hired a new coach this year to coach it. They have 3 new guys in the middle of the line. They switched their tackles. So they got to get on the same page and get it going here. They have a bye week coming up in 2 weeks. Maybe they can figure some things out then.
All right. Now, if we look at the Tennessee Titans and Detroit Lions game, we saw a lot of points, which I assume means a lot of fantasy points for owners. One thing you saw, though, that was interesting was the Lions' use of Mikel LeSure. Yeah,
you don't expect to get value out of a Lions running back, but with how much they used LeSure in that game, 26 times he rushed for 100 yards and got a touchdown. Coming off of his 2-game suspension, Kevin Smith was nowhere to be found. So
he was on the bench, George. I think that's where he was.
Well, if that's the case moving forward, then fantasy owners might have stumbled upon a pretty good running back, too, with LeSure.
So you would say grab him if you can, if he's still out there?
I think he probably won't be out there, but if he is on your bench, you know, think about putting him in your starting lineup this week.
Okay, now speaking of starting lineups and speaking of players that you might not have, one of the things fantasy owners do, obviously, is you look at the stat sheet and you say, wow, look at this guy, how well has he been performing? But from the fantasy source perspective, part of your job is to find those guys that maybe I don't see on the stat sheet. So who is that guy this week?
Well, it's Jerome Simpson, the wide receiver for Minnesota. He's like LeSure. He's coming off a suspension, so his stats won't show up when you're searching for players in your fantasy leagues. But he has a great opportunity to start opposite Percy Harvin. They need a second receiver. Michael Jenkins and Devin Aromashodu aren't very much competition for him. So look at him against the Lions in a good matchup. He could pay immediate dividends. I like Simpson this week.
Are you a believer in Christian Ponder's ability to deliver the ball now after 3 weeks?
I'm starting to believe it. The first 2 weeks he had, you know, some inferior opponents, but when you put up a good game against the 49ers, that's saying something.
That is saying something. And George, you just said something fantasy owners are going to love this week. Thanks again for stopping by. For George Winkler, I'm Tom Vandervoort. Thanks for watching.